I no longer identify as Nigerian. That one sentence shook a continent. Kemi Badenoch, a top figure in the UK's Conservative Party and a woman of Nigerian descent, stood on a London stage and declared, "I left Nigeria behind." It's a poor, backward country. My home is England. But what she didn't expect was who would respond. Not a journalist, not a Nigerian politician, but the president of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. And he didn't call as a politician. He called as an African. Success does not require shame, he told her. That call, raw, personal, and unfiltered, leaked within hours. By morning, it had swept across African radio stations, WhatsApp groups, and TikTok feeds. Mothers in Lagos wept on camera. He spoke for us. Young people across the continent marched holding signs that read, "Africa is not backward. Africa is my honor." This wasn't just about one woman's denial. It became something bigger, a moment of reckoning, a cultural earthquake. And now the question echoes far beyond Africa's borders when someone rejects where they come from. Is that personal freedom or a betrayal of those still living that reality with pride and dignity? If you believe that dignity is not optional, subscribe now. If you've ever been told to be ashamed of where you're from, share your voice in the comments. And if you feel that President Ibrahim Traoré didn't just speak for Burkina Faso, but for millions, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. It began with a smile, a politician's smile, confident, composed, calculated. Kemi Badenoch, daughter of Nigerian immigrants, now a senior leader in the UK Conservative Party, stood on a London stage and delivered a line that stunned her audience. "I no longer identify as Nigerian. I was born in the UK. I serve the UK. Nigeria is a poor, backward country. We need to stop romanticizing it." For a moment, there was silence. Then came polite applause. But far beyond that London hall, her words ignited a fire. Within hours, the clip exploded on African social media. From Lagos to Accra to Kinshasa, the outrage was instant and fierce. How dare she does success require amnesia? Hashtags like Root Pride and We Remember began trending across platforms. But while millions shared their anger online, one man acted differently. In Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré heard the clip. He didn't call for a press conference. He didn't issue a vague diplomatic statement. Instead, he made one request: connect me to her. No advisors, no interpreters, just me. And so it happened. A private line was opened. Two voices, one in London, one in West Africa. At first, Kemi Badenoch sounded amused. "Ah, the president of Burkina Faso. This is quite a surprise." But Traoré's voice came through cold and deliberate. "Don't worry, I'm not calling as a politician," he said. "I'm calling as an African." There was silence, and then slowly Traoré began to speak. "You say you're not Nigerian," he continued. "Let me remind you of what you've chosen to forget." He recited her story not from a file but from memory. "Your mother was 8 months pregnant in Lagos when she flew to London just before Margaret Thatcher ended birthright citizenship. You were born in Wimbledon just in time, but after that you were sent back to Nigeria. You grew up in Lagos. You studied in a local school. You ate jollof on the streets. You were a teenage Nigerian girl even if you pretend not to be." Badenoch was quiet. The silence stretched. But Traoré wasn't finished. "When you call Nigeria backward, you insult not just your own blood, but every mother who cooks by candlelight to send her child to school. Every teacher who holds chalk in one hand and a baby on her back. Every nurse who held your forehead when you had malaria. You can pretend you were born in Buckingham Palace, but we remember you when your shoes had holes and you borrowed textbooks." Her voice finally cut in sharp defensive. "I didn't choose that life. I was taken there." "No," Traoré replied. "But you chose to erase it. And that is worse." The call lasted 12 minutes. No yelling, no insults, just truth delivered like a surgeon's scalpel. And then, someone leaked the full audio. Burkina Faso's national broadcaster aired it word for word. By morning, it was playing on repeat in Nigerian markets, Ghanaian barbershops, South African taxis. Traoré's line, "Success does not require shame," became a rallying cry. A Nigerian professor wrote, "Kemi's success is not the problem. Her denial is." African youth groups across Europe reposted the audio with one caption, "He spoke for all of us." And that's when the second shock hit. Traoré wasn't done. The very next day, his office issued a formal declaration: Kemi Badenoch is hereby banned from entering Burkina Faso until she issues a public apology to the people of Nigeria and the African continent. It was the first time in modern history an African leader had banned a UK official not for politics, but for insulting African identity. British media scrambled. BBC anchors asked, what gives him the right? But on the streets of Lagos, the response was clear. Finally, someone stood up. For millions across Africa and the diaspora, that phone call wasn't about Kemi anymore. It was about all the times they'd heard their accents mocked, their homes called primitive, their identities questioned. It was about dignity. And one leader had dared to defend it with calm, with facts, and without ever raising his voice. The call was never meant to be public. 12 minutes. No shouting. No insults. Just one man reminding a woman of what she once knew and chose to forget. But when that audio leaked, it didn't just spread, it erupted. In barbershops from Lagos to Harlem, in churches across London, in WhatsApp groups of grandmothers and students alike, everyone was listening to Ibrahim Traoré's voice. Calm, sharp, unforgiving. And then the most damning line: you said Nigeria is backward. But do you forget who wiped your nose when you had malaria, who taught you math in Surulere, who lent you shoes when yours had holes? People didn't just listen, they wept. A Nigerian mother filmed herself crying in her kitchen. He spoke for us. For every woman who never left, who stayed to build even when the world laughed. In Johannesburg, a university class paused their lecture to play the full audio. One student stood and said, "We don't need perfect leaders. We need fearless ones." The response was not just emotional, it became organizational. Youth groups began to mobilize across cities. In Accra, in Nairobi, in Dakar, thousands took to the streets under a single banner: Root Pride. You don't have to deny where you're from to succeed. They wore t-shirts with stitched flags, Nigeria and the UK, not as a tribute to empire, but as a reclamation of complexity, of identity. In London, outside Kemi Badenoch's office in Essex, protesters gathered holding signs: "We are not backward. We are your mirror. You forgot us, but we remember you." Her team scrambled. Public relations consultants advised silence. But silence now spoke louder than words. Then came the moment that truly shattered the image she had built. A video from 2003 resurfaced. There she was, teenage Kemi, laughing, clapping, speaking fluent Yoruba at a youth event in Lagos. Proud, rooted, Nigerian. The video was shared millions of times. The caption that trended worldwide: "So what changed?" And just when people thought it couldn't get more personal, an old classmate named Adewara went live on national TV in Nigeria. Her voice shook, but she spoke. "We used to write poems about Nigeria together. Kemi once told me, 'I'll grow up and make this country proud.' But now she pretends we don't exist. Like our story doesn't matter." That testimony hit differently. It wasn't political anymore. It was familial. Back in the UK, things fell apart fast. Nigerian community leaders in London returned her campaign donations. Youth forums disinvited her from events. Churches that once welcomed her took her photos off their walls. And then came the blow that broke her image completely. Her own extended family in Lagos issued a statement. "We, the family of Kemi Badenoch, do not support her remarks. We are proud Nigerians." She was no longer just politically isolated. She was exiled by her own people. While Kemi's team struggled to contain the fallout, Traore stayed silent. No gloating, no follow-up statements. But he did one thing. He visited a local school in Ouagadougou. There, he sat with children drawing maps of Africa. One girl, no older than 9, raised her hand. "If I could say one thing to the world," she said, "I'd say Africa is not poor. We are just beginning." Traore smiled. "Yes," he said, "and we begin with truth." Then another wave of reaction came from across the Atlantic. In cities like Atlanta, Chicago, and New York, African-American churches played the call recording during Sunday service. Elders nodded. Mothers said, "This isn't just about Nigeria. This is about all of us who've been told to be ashamed." On TikTok, a young Black American posted, "This man Traore, he just made being African cool again." The ripple became a tide, and still no apology from Kemi. Only one closed-door plea: she asked Burkina Faso's diplomats if Traore would consider issuing a joint statement of reconciliation. The answer came in writing: I do not apologize for standing up for the dignity of Africa. If speaking the truth costs me favor in London, so be it. I do not trade respect for diplomacy. That letter went viral again. What started as a 12-minute call had now become a global cultural reckoning. Not just about Kemi, not just about Nigeria, but about what it means to be African in a world that demands we forget. By now, the story had become impossible to contain. What began as a 12-minute phone call was now a full-blown cultural firestorm spreading far beyond Africa or Britain. And the fallout was seismic. In the UK, the walls around Kemi Badenoch began to crack. It started quietly, a few missed calls from donors, a postponed interview, a sudden cancellation of her panel at a conservative women's event. But behind closed doors, it was chaos. One MP speaking off record said it plainly. She picked the wrong fight. He embarrassed her without even raising his voice. That's dangerous. Polls among Black British communities plummeted. Support dropped by over 40% in just 2 weeks. Nigerian lawyers in London filed a petition to censure her statements in Parliament. Local councils with large African populations began distancing themselves from her. Her team suggested she apologize or at least issue a statement of clarification. She refused. I don't owe anyone my past, she reportedly snapped in a private meeting. But the public wasn't asking for her past. They were demanding truth and dignity. Then came the diplomatic tremor. Inside 10 Downing Street aides were in damage control mode. The Foreign Office began quiet outreach to Burkina Faso's embassy. Can we smooth this over? Perhaps a symbolic gesture. But Traore's response once again was unshakable. We are not asking for favors. We are asking for respect. British diplomats were stunned. They had underestimated him, a young African leader from a landlocked country with no nuclear weapons and no global bank seat. And yet here he was, reshaping the conversation across continents. Then came the bombshell. A leaked internal report from the UK intelligence community labeled Ibrahim Traoré as the most influential African leader under 40, highly unpredictable, capable of shifting public sentiment in the diaspora with minimal resources. Translation: he couldn't be bought, he couldn't be controlled, and that made him dangerous. What followed next was no coincidence. British tabloids published a series of sensational headlines. Traoré under fire, secret foreign bank accounts linked to Burkina Faso. Leader is Africa's rising star, hiding millions. The documents were vague. No evidence, no context, just grainy photos and bold accusations. It was a familiar tactic. But this time, the old playbook didn't work. Traoré didn't flinch. Instead, he called a national press conference. The room was packed: local reporters, international media from London, Paris, Washington, Al Jazeera, and even Chinese state media. He stepped up, held the leaked evidence in one hand and said, "These are fabrications. Nothing in them is real. They are not a threat to me, they are a threat to truth." Then calmly, he dropped the hammer. "I have formally invited Burkina Faso's Anti-Corruption Commission and an independent Pan-African Audit Board to investigate me fully. I welcome international observers. I have nothing to hide." The room went silent. The message was clear: I will not be destroyed by whispers. I am not afraid of the dark. But just as the British campaign faltered, a new voice entered the scene. Paul Hargrave, a retired MI6 intelligence officer, released a video online. His words were cold, factual, and damning. There was indeed a coordinated attempt to discredit Ibrahim Traoré. He wasn't the real target. His influence was. He added, "The West has feared a leader like this for decades. Proud, disciplined, unapologetically African, and followed by millions." The video hit 30 million views in 48 hours. And now everything fell into place. The smear campaign, the desperation, the silence from European allies. It wasn't about money. It was about fear that the old systems no longer worked. In Africa, the result was electric. Traoré's approval ratings soared not just in Burkina Faso, but across the region. In student unions, in Kenya, in universities, in Ghana, in rural towns, in Senegal, young people printed his quotes on banners, murals, and street walls. Success does not require shame. Truth does not tremble. We are not backward, we are unfinished. And in the diaspora, especially among African Americans, something subtle but powerful shifted. In barbershops in Detroit, in classrooms, in Houston, in black churches, in Baltimore, people asked each other, why don't our leaders speak like this? Why does it take a man from Burkina Faso to remind us of our worth? Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch remained defiant but isolated. She canceled all public appearances. Donors went quiet. Even the Prime Minister's office refused to comment on her behalf. Her own career was now in question. But across the ocean, Traoré wasn't waiting. He had moved on to his next speech, his next school visit, his next quiet act of defiance. Because for him, this was never about one woman. It was about the system that made such denials possible and profitable. While headlines across Africa and Europe fixated on the confrontation, something deeper was unfolding in the United States, a cultural resonance that no one in Washington had anticipated. In churches across Georgia, Louisiana, and Maryland, black pastors included Ibrahim Traoré's speech in their Sunday sermons. In barbershops in Detroit, Oakland, and Atlanta, the leaked phone call wasn't just a topic, it was a teaching moment. This ain't just about Nigeria, one elder said in a community center in Harlem. It's about how many of us were taught to forget who we are to be accepted. In a viral podcast, an African-American historian put it plainly, this young president from Burkina Faso just schooled the entire black diaspora on dignity. And he didn't raise his voice once. In DC, policy analysts were less sentimental. They were alarmed. One confidential State Department memo described Traoré as charismatic, digitally potent, and ideologically unaligned, a strategic threat if his narrative continues to scale. America doesn't know how to respond. He's not anti-West in slogans, he's anti-humiliation in tone. He doesn't burn flags, he reclaims stories. And worst of all, he's effective. In the international press, the shift was subtle but unmistakable. The New York Times called the leaked call a turning point in how African dignity is defended on the global stage. The Washington Post ran a Sunday editorial, Why Ibrahim Traoré's calm confrontation is more threatening to the West than any angry protest. Meanwhile, black American celebrities, musicians, writers, activists began posting Traoré's quotes, "You can have two flags in your heart, but don't burn one to wave the other." These weren't just reposts, they were recognitions. For many, Traoré was becoming what the West had tried to prevent, a global black figure not created by Hollywood, but by history. In universities from Howard to Yale, students organized panels on the Traoré doctrine, the idea that African identity could be defended with grace, truth, and absolute clarity. One professor put it this way, "We've studied Mandela, we've honored Lumumba. But now we're witnessing Traoré, and it's live. Even beyond the black diaspora, his message rippled. In Brazil, Afro-Latin communities echoed his words. In France, students in banlieues lit candles outside African embassies in solidarity. And in quiet offices in Brussels, London, and even Tel Aviv, analysts were forced to admit the unthinkable. Africa may finally have a leader who can't be ignored and can't be bought. No one expected it to end this way. Not with shouting, not with sanctions. But with a letter, a handwritten note from a 9-year-old girl in the UK, half Nigerian, half Ghanaian, mocked at school for her accent, for her skin, for the poor continent she was told she came from. "Dear Mr. Traoré," she wrote, "when I watched your video, I cried. You made me feel proud to be African. Thank you. Love, Amara." Traoré responded not with a press release, but with a video message. "Amara, your name is beautiful. Your people are beautiful. Never let anyone shame your roots. One day when you speak, let the world listen." It reached 50 million views in 3 days. And just like that, what began as a personal phone call became a cultural awakening. But with awakening comes resistance. Behind closed doors in European and American foreign offices, new strategies were drafted. Advisors whispered, "Contain the narrative." Analysts warned, "We've created a symbol." And then came the headline, "The world didn't expect Captain Ibrahim Traoré, shortlisted for the Nobel Peace Prize. Not for war, not for charity, but for dignity. For defending identity without a bullet fired." Kemi Badenoch, now politically exiled even among her own, lashed out online, "We're rewarding populists now." What does that say about serious leadership? But under her post, thousands replied, "He didn't beg to be respected. He earned it. You denied your people. He defended them. Who are you to speak for Africa when you're ashamed of it?" And now we are left with a question, not for Kemi, not for Traoré, but for ourselves. What does it truly mean to succeed? Can you rise in the world without erasing where you came from? And when someone dares to speak truth softly, firmly, without apology, do we stand with them or stay silent? In a world obsessed with power, Ibrahim Traoré chose dignity. And maybe, just maybe, that's what made him powerful. If you believe that success should never require shame, share this video. If you believe President Ibrahim Traoré spoke for more than one country, leave a comment. And if you believe it's time we honored leaders who stand in truth, not just in office, subscribe now. Because the next chapter isn't about Kemi, it's about all of us, and how loudly we're willing to say Africa is not backward. We are just beginning.